Hello there, everyone. So, I hope you're doing alright and that you've not done anything slightly illegal in the past few hours. But if not, then happy days. And today we're going to be talking about my history of psychedelic use. Because I've noticed a lot of people have been a bit confused over the content on the channel. So, I'd just like to clear it up and state that all of my personal stories and trip reports are on this playlist called Personal Stories. I'll link it in the description. So you can find everything you want to know about my own experience with psychedelics on there. But videos like these, I just go into a bit more detail because apparently some people are actually interested in what I have to say. So for you lucky individuals out there, this is the day of reckoning. I'm going to talk about the first couple of times I actually took psychedelics and how these experiences of mine ended up catalysing my consciousness, laying the groundwork for my love of the field and of just all things mind-altering. Because even as a child, I was just interested in weird stuff. I think, obviously, because I was slightly autistic as a youth. I never got diagnosed or anything, but I was an extreme introvert, sort of like, had lots of autistic tendencies. Even going back and watching my old YouTube videos, it's so clear I had some weird mental disorder going on. But obviously there's absolutely nothing wrong with having autism. If anything, it can be a superpower because it makes you an actual interesting individual. I mean, I'd rather be autistic than be a peak normie who fucking listens to like Drake all day or whatever. Nothing wrong if you like that sort of music, but I'm just giving an example of what normies buzz off. That is absolute horror for me. But I was always weird as a youth. I just liked weird films, weird music, and weird games. I was just so out of place. But up until I first took MDMA, I was very much an introvert, and I didn't start coming out of my shell till sixth form, or year 12 as they call it colloquially. And I did MDMA at this party, just did a line of it, and it was when I first started like proper drinking, going out and partying, and I was chipping away at my introversion. But the real killer was when I took an MDMA tablet at a rave, and I was just off one's rocker, to say the least. I was hallucinating, I was bathed in waves of euphoria. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. And that really did open me up, got rid of my tunnel vision, my closed-mindedness, and it started to dissolve them social barriers that I'd put in place, the AT field. And that all just went away, and I started to become a lot more sociable. But with that also came my amplified interest in mind-altering substances, and that's where I ended up getting a bit of a polysubstance addiction. Like, I started experimenting with far too many, and it was just getting ridiculous to the point of like just abusing my mind, and it was close to causing like permanent damage. But basically, the first time I ever took proper psychedelics, where I first started tripping balls, was when I bought 25i off this girl not in sixth form. Well, I was in sixth form, and then she was like 2 years below me, still in like main high school. And she was like, "Hey, you want to buy some acid?" And I was just saying, "Yeah, absolutely. I am a polysubstance addict, and I will not say no." Then, of course, like many people can attest to, it ended up being 25i, because that night, I think later that night, I went to this party, this rough party full of like chavs, possibly the worst setting you could have taken a psychedelic in for your first time. And but obviously I was desperate to try it, and I was like, yeah, I'll try this little fucking rectangle, put it on my tongue, see what happens. And I found out at first. I was like, oh, what? Why is my tongue going all numb? I've never heard of this before from researching, because I was proper on it. I wasn't just going into it blindly. I mean, I definitely had some problems with abusing like chemicals, but I did do my research, and I didn't go into it blindly at all. I wanted to absorb the knowledge before doing it, and obviously when I took it, I was like, oh shit, my tongue's gone numb. This is not actually right. LSD's not supposed to do that. And it was a proper bitter taste, like noticeably bitter. But obviously, I was so determined to actually trip for the first time. I was like, yeah, fuck it, we'll just do it, won't we? And it was a pretty mild trip, obviously, compared to some of the weird, mystical, out-of-body experiences I've had in the past few years of my psychedelic experience. Because the more psychedelics you take and the more experiment, the more you're chipping away at the ego over time. It becomes easier to have ego dissolution experiences. to experience infinite consciousness and that, because basically the more psychedelics you take in, you are amplifying your consciousness in like a fraction of a way, and it stacks on top of each other. But over the first time, I know I had mad visuals. I remember this. We were watching. There was on the TV. There was an album cover. I think it was of like Nicki Minaj or some shit, and it was one of her album covers. And there was this pink like splotch of painting in the middle of the album cover, and it was just absolutely flying all over the place to me. And I was getting serious visuals. Everything was moving and breathing and morphing. I couldn't believe it. If anything, when I was watching it, what was funny was I thought we were watching a video, and then the day after, when I was actually sober and woke up. And then she put that album back on again, and I said, holy fuck, when I was watching this last night, the middle pink splotch was flying out at me and manipulating itself and everything, so I couldn't believe that. It was actually such a shock experiencing such mad visuals that it didn't really register in my head at first. But what was funny about that night is it ended up going massively downhill, because all these like proper chavvy sort of geezers were like, yes lad, let's fucking roll a biff mate, and I was like, yeah, go on then, I'll have a bit of weed. Like, I'd been smoking weed like for a good year or so, on and off with mates around then, so I was like, yeah, I can handle 25i plus weed, which was just absolutely ridiculous. It was such a ridiculous thought in general, because even if it was just normal weed, it probably would have sent my head west. But what it actually was, it was them synthetic cannabinoids, it was called K2, or no, it's called Cherry Bomb actually, and they didn't tell me until I'd literally finished smoking, like, oh, you just smoke fucking spice, la. And then I was like, oh my fucking god, here we go. And then literally all that happened was my vision just became like a JPEG, like zoomed in, everything became pixels, and that I was like, I need to go fucking lie down me. So I went upstairs, absolutely jolted up there, just collapsed on the bed, and I was in the fetal position for like a good hour or two, just like feeling disgusting. And if it went worse, it probably could have put me off psychedelics for life, and imagine how different life would be. I wouldn't even be recording this right now. So, fortunately, it didn't put me off, and a few weeks later, I ended up sourcing 1p LSD through this guy I know, a good mate of mine, and he was obviously buying it online when it was really easy to, when research chemicals were proper easy to buy, say in like 2015, which is a long time ago, which makes me feel very old. And I'm not even that old, which is so weird. Reminiscing about stuff like this, it's insane, isn't it? You're opening the vaults to like a completely different version of yourself, because I'm not the same person I was back then. I had a lot more egoic bullshit going on. But yeah, me and my two other mates, M and D, I'll call them, we were like, alright, want to try some acid? Like, let's fucking do it, boys. And we wanted to go fishing and just have a relaxing day by like the river. Obviously, that didn't end up going to plan whatsoever. We bit off way more than we could chew with that. We got there, and it was going really well at first, actually. We just dropped, I think we dropped like one tab each or so, and then we didn't come up for ages, and obviously made the extremely silly mistake of being like, yeah, lad, let's just take another half, it'll be sound, won't it? But in the process of trying to do that and trying to split the tabs, I ended up dropping them on these rocks. And it was just like a banking full of like rocks and everything and stones, and I was like, shit, we need to grab that, because that's worth a lot of money, and also we want to get trippy as fuck. So I tried digging, as I was digging into stones to get the tabs went further down into the banking. I was literally ripping throwing these stones out of the ground and everything, and the tabs kept going deeper and deeper in, and then I literally just managed to pluck it. And in that moment of pure joy of finding them, me and my mate both took another half, and we're like, yeah, this is gonna be a sick night, innit? Obviously, it all went to shit pretty soon afterwards. My other mate got his fishing rod stuck on his fishing line stuck on a tree over the other side of the river. He had to jump in, and then he was struggling to swim on acid. He said he was forgetting how to fucking like move, and I was like, oh my god, we're gonna have to go in and save him. But thankfully, he ended up wading back through the waters back to the banking. So that was creating some bad vibes, some weird energy, and then before we knew it, it was getting dark, and we were absolutely tripping balls that I could barely see, because obviously, like I said before, I feel like when you first start taking psychedelics, the visuals are absolutely insane, like pure kaleidoscopic fractals flying about everywhere, mishmash of colours, both recognisable and unrecognisable, just being in a completely like psychedelic dream world, fantasy land, like how you think it's going to be when you're younger when people talk about psychedelics. It's because it was just a purely visual like experience. I wasn't having any insights into God or reality or the nature of consciousness, because I think it takes time for psychedelics to actually open you up to this sort of stuff, because really you need to have a heightened state of consciousness to experience that. Unless you take like 50 grams of mushies, then that's going to force you to experience it, but that's not going to go very well, I don't think. So what ended up happening was we were just stuck on this banking. I mean, if you were sober, you'd be able to get off this banking so easily. There was literally just like a little jump you need to make to get from a little stream over to the other side of the banking where like the road and the civilization was. And we were tripping so hard we literally couldn't see. And we had to call our mate, Fee. She lived in the village, and she came up with this lad, and he was like, we need to go save our friends. Some pure anime shit. And we were stuck on this banking just like helpless children, like laughing our heads off, but also shit scared that we were going to get stuck out on this banking overnight. And it was pretty freezing as well. So I was cacking my pants, and Fee had to come over to the other side of the bank and say, right, you just need to jump over this little stream, it's really not a big deal. And we were just stuck at the end of it, and to us it looked like a giant ravine that was just cascading into the abyss, and we literally couldn't do it. And as D tried to jump over, he literally fell in the stream because he couldn't gauge like how big the jump was at all. But once he did that, it sort of became clear what we needed to do. We got over to the side, and then we were on the path, and I just was just tripping serious balls. I was looking down into the path, and it was just going on forever, like infinitely deep. I could see like stars in the pavement. I looked up, and like the whole sky was illuminated with strange morphing visuals. I swear I could see like faces and that. It was absolutely mad. It was just all your classical psychedelic visuals that you can imagine. And then basically we got back to M's car, and we're like, right, we'll just chill out in here and get absolutely west and smoke a few Lambert and Butlers. And we were in there, and basically them two started to skits out because they realised that it was a popular area for, say, like gypsy travellers and proper like rough sort of like pikey gypsies. And that just started skitzing us out big time, and we were absolutely shitting ourselves. And I was like, right, we need to get out of here now. So Em was like, oh yeah, I'll just drive us back into the village. And I said, mate, you cannot drive. You're literally on fucking 1.5 tabs. It's the first time you're doing it. First time you've ever done that proper psychedelic. Do not drive. We're literally going to die. And he was like, nah, lad, we need to get out of here. I'd rather die in a car crash than get murked by some gypsies. And I was like, okay, fair enough, but I'm going to close my eyes and try not to be here. So I literally closed my eyes the whole route of the journey. It was only like 5 minutes down the road, but he must have been tripping balls, because I literally could not see. Like, I was closing my eyes and I was seeing like dancing fractal Aztec women in my consciousness, and they were dancing to the tune of Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Zephyr song. I was so in tune with like my senses and that. Everything was amplified to fuck. But somehow he ended up making it back. I was like, holy shit, if I was driving... I wasn't even driving back then, but I drive now, and I think, mate, I could not drive on psychedelic at all. Like, it might be the hardest substance to drive on by far, other than probably, like, being absolutely pissed or ketty. And yeah, somehow we made it back, and the sigh of relief we gave when we actually got back was unbelievable. And then the trip went in a really positive direction, but it ended up lasting for ages. Again, we didn't know what we were bargaining for when we took these tabs. We thought it was just like, oh, we'll just trip for a few hours. And this was like 8 hours later, and we're still absolutely tripping balls. Probably because we redosed, like when we were sort of starting to feel it as well. And so D went back to his house and was like, yeah, I'm going to go to sleep, mate. Obviously, he didn't end up going to sleep at all. And he just kept messaging us when we went back. Me and Em went back to his house, and then all this weird stuff started happening. We were watching Pulp Fiction, and it was just weird. Felt like I was becoming the characters, and I felt like they were saying stuff to me, stuff they weren't saying. I'd be like, I turned to Em in his bed. I'm like, mate, did you hear him? Did you hear Samuel L. Jackson say that? He's like, yeah, lad, it's fucking freaking me out. And then, like, a ladder outside his house ended up falling down. That skits us out. We're like, oh my god, we're going to get caught in bed together on acid at, like, 7 in the morning. So then we waited there for a few more hours, and Em was like, right, I'm gonna drive you home, lad. Like, I can't really be having you here tripping balls. I need to get to sleep. So I was like, go on then. Just get this night over and done with. And then we went to pick up D, who'd literally just been, like, trying to watch stuff on his phone, and just ended up literally losing himself in what he was watching, putting it down, trying to go to sleep, not being able to sleep because he was absolutely stimulated and tripping to folk. So he came with us for the journey home, and on the journey home it was pretty magical. We ended up going to my house and there was a deer outside it, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck, we have manifested some seriously weird shit tonight. I've never seen a deer outside my house, and it was like a whole family of deer, I think, on the road just outside my house, and I was like, oh my god, this is a sign from Jesus. And I just I tried to get to sleep going in the house, and obviously I was just up for ages. I don't think I slept that night. And that was like the first time, I ever first time I ever properly tripped and had insane visuals. Because the other time at the Chav house, it was like impeded by my foolish intake of synthetic cannabinoids. And that really began my journey with psychedelics in 2015. And it wasn't until a year later, later into the year, that people who I knew that were experimenting with psychedelics, my very, very good friend Kay, he actually had the first ego death out of all of us, and my other mate C, who had a very disturbing ego death. And I'll talk about this at a later date in the future. I'll probably call it like the house party from hell. It's this house party I had, and it was when we were proper in the midst of like session and making mates with like other recreational drug users in the area and DMB ravers and all that. And then me, my mate C and my mate K were all on acid at this house party that I was hosting. It just went completely awry. C had a like disturbing like PTSD inducing ego death that ended up turning out alright for him in the end. Obviously had a lot of revelations from it. But then K, he also had like a destructive ego death. He was trying to dig into the earth with his bare hands and he's chipped his tooth and that. But C, on the other hand, he was like fighting people off and going mental, throwing stuff around. And Kay was like pretty alright when he got out of it. But I'll talk about that in the future. But that year of 2015 was the year that my psychedelic adventures were catalysed. And it's never been the same since. But like I say before, the visuals for me when I take psychedelics are very, very subtle. Obviously still there and still not like sober reality or like smoking weed or anything. But they're not. It's way more mental and consciousness oriented for me now when I take psychedelics. It's a lot more spiritual and mystical when it does that. When I do have an ego death, like the visuals are fucking like insane because I'm literally flying around in other universes, experiencing like vortexes of consciousness, and it's insane. But the actual just normal trip is very subdued, unlike when it was the first few times I took LSD and 25I and all these weird ass chemicals. So I hope you enjoyed that weird rambling. I can't believe I've been talking for 18 minutes. That's fucking weird, that. I mean, I can literally chat shit for so long. If I was only like 4 minutes into it. So I better nip it in the bud here. Hope you enjoyed that, and let us know if you want to hear more stuff in the future. And the next personal story I'll do is on the house party from hell, the nightmare that is never ending. Some say I'm still stuck there, but you know the score.